An interesting fact is that there hasn't been a single broken bone. That was amazing. In my imagination, I had the impression that all that force which emerges from a crash like this had been buffered by this ring of light. If it hadn't been for this ring of light, I think I would have suffered fractures from head to toe.
Frau Möst, Sie haben Medizin studiert.
Miss Möst, you studied medicine, but then pursued an artistic career as a flautist. You're an internationally sought-after interpreter of contemporary music. Moreover, you teach, give masterclasses, and are an author of children's stories and poems. In 2010, there was a moment in your life that changed everything, namely a car accident. Please tell us what happened back then and how it happened.
I had several appointments in Detmold and left Göttingen in the morning by car. It was a wonderful day. I felt great and I was in such a good mood. It was very dry, but on the A44 near Warburg, it suddenly got icy. I wasn't able to see that or suspect that beforehand. The car started to spin around and hit the plank, a direct impact. In retrospect, I was told that the state of North Rhine-Westphalia had way too little salt and therefore they weren't able to keep up with the salt spreading. Behind me, there was a 50-kilometer-long traffic jam, and even in front of me, some truck had an accident that was really bad. I was just in the middle of it. I still remember that I was spinning around, but then my mind was still, and I only saw this wonderful, huge ring of light. It was outsized, and suddenly there was this impulse, someone is taking care of me right now. I didn't know what was actually going on in this moment, but I knew that there is someone looking after me, which made me feel very safe actually. I wasn't scared at all, to be honest. The impact was quite heavy. The entire front part of the car was gone. I could have gotten off in the front. Luckily, the airbags got triggered because I would probably be dead without them. I still remember when the ambulance arrived. The traffic queue was over 50 kilometers long and they just shouted, "Is anyone else injured?" I got out of the car by myself and said, "Yes, I am." But I didn't quite know what was damaged from head to toe. I was even negotiating with the policeman. He was even scolding me for not paying enough attention. I gave them a signature, and once I was in the ambulance, I noticed, oh, something tremendous just happened there. And the state of shock started to crawl up. I was freezing and basically just waited for the hospital to admit me. That was in Warburg, a small hospital.
That means you were never really unconscious during this whole time?
No, I was able to talk to the paramedics and so on. I can still remember that the surgeons were waiting for me at the entrance and said, "Oh, look, she's alive. We have expected you dead." As a matter of fact, it took me 2 weeks to understand that I was alive. Somehow, my consciousness drifted off into another sphere, and it really took me 14 days to understand that I am not dead.
Let's go back to the accident again. How can one imagine that? You experienced the scene from the outside during the accident, but simultaneously you had this special feeling of secureness.
Yes, that's a discrepancy that can't be really explained with words. So much is going on in this moment, which can't be really comprehended by the average person. I believe that there are several levels which match or have to match. One of them is the physical level, where one already notices, oh, something hurts, or one is unable to move something. The other level is the spiritual one. On the spiritual level, it was such a calmness, and as I like to call it, an eternal now. It is something that just is. It is, and one can't escape from it. One can only either accept it or not accept it. It was kind of like a glimpse of this heavenly glory that is preached to us over and over again, or that is being foretold a lot. This absolute harmony, this absolute love, this light without any imperfections, without conflicts, without problems. I would say that was the spiritual level.
Did you ever experience anything similar in the past?
Not like that. I mean, I was already convinced before that there is a being which is a higher power. Christians call it God. Basically, this experience deepened or confirmed something I already believed in.
You talked to police officers and paramedics while being in a state of shock. You gave a signature, but at the same time, you experienced this loving light and absolute secureness within you.
Yes, one can say so. I reacted very calmly. I mean, it's not very funny when you are in the ambulance and the policeman starts to scold like, couldn't you be more careful? He told me that I need to pay for this whole incident and that it was all my fault. But I think that this protection, this feeling of security, helps one to not get aggressive and to deal with it in a calm way. That is actually done quite brilliant by nature. It arranged it so that the physical shock is not there instantly with the shock bladder and freezing and so on, but that it develops throughout a couple of hours. This enables one to react responsibly. You can still act in a proper way, and I mean, I was completely alone in the car. Therefore, nature has implemented that wonderfully. At the same time, there was this feeling of total secureness, like nothing can happen to me now. I am safe. No matter what happens after all, I am safe.
Looking back, how would you describe the time period of your experience? Was it a single moment, or was it a matter of seconds, minutes, or days?
The calmness stayed until I got home. But this is a story of its own, the way home.
Nach Hause gekommen bin, das war nur so eine eigene Geschichte, der Weg nach Hause. Das ist ein Erlebnis, was...
It is an experience which is difficult to express through words. The language in this case dissolves somehow. There are no expressions like, that's how long it took, that was suddenly, that was now, that was before, that was after. It is rather an everlasting now, which simply is. I stored it in a way which feels like it somehow even still is. The experience alone, like seeing the ring of light, lasted maybe a couple of minutes. But the feeling of secureness, it lasts up until now.
das hält eigentlich an.
I know it's very challenging to describe it linguistically, maybe even impossible. But could you try to describe your sensory impressions during this experience in a little more detail? What did you perceive?
I had the feeling that kind of like all antennas that one can stretch out are being opened, which are able to perceive that light in a very special way, very different than perceiving electrical light or when one enjoys the sunlight or the moonlight. It is incredibly intense. Then it becomes very loving, full of kindness, full of harmony. I would even say that patience fits in there very well. Patience for whoever has to go through this in that moment. Coming back to life is a process which takes many, many months and sometimes even longer than a year. But one has no feeling of being rushed, like, now you really have to hurry up to come back into your life fully. It's rather like, I have all the time in the world. If I, and this is an important aspect, if I say yes to it. It required an absolute yes from me on all levels, on the physical, the psychological, and on the spiritual. Kind of like, can you do it now? Do you want to come back to life again? But this light gave this information without the implication of any aggression or aggressive demand, no punishment. It lies some sort of mercy in it, just as one would think of if referring to God, compassionate, incredibly loving. The word bliss applies too, since one is very fortunate if something like this can be survived. I could have been dead due to the direct impact. The surgeons also told me, well, you have been extremely lucky. Moreover, I think it is encouraging, and an incredible amount of gratitude is involved. That was actually pretty new for me, that gratitude to such an extent can exist. It is indescribable, such a fortune, bliss, thankfulness. And as I mentioned, encouragement, the feeling of, I can do it now, but there is no rush, no pressure at all. I can do it at my own pace, whatever is good for me. It felt like I had a sensor that enabled me to tell whenever things were too much of physiotherapists, too many physiotherapy sessions, too much external impact, which was a topic of its own in that time period when I was coming back. I always felt a little pinch in my stomach, and then I knew, okay, stop, it is too much. That will be postponed to the next day. Different pace. That was like a navigator to me. Just when I noticed, oh, stinging in the stomach, enough, that is too much now.
You've told us that the physicians thought you hadn't survived the accident. What kind of accident did you have?
An interesting fact is that there hasn't been a single broken bone. That was amazing. In my imagination, I had the impression that all that force which emerges from a crash like this had been buffered by this ring of light. If it hadn't been for this ring of light, I think I would have suffered fractures from head to toe. This ring of light was a buffer, so to speak. Kind of like we're now taking up all that power that arises from this impact. You can get out of the car now. All we need from you is this final 100% yes. that you want to keep accomplishing something on earth, and we will do the rest. But agreeing to this was up to me.
We will do the rest. Who is this we?
God and angels, from the perspective of Christian religion, or one can call it the spiritual world. Whether it was 100 or 10 or 1,000, I can't tell.
Could we put it like this? It was an overwhelming experience for you, but speaking of God and angels would be an interpretation?
From my point of view, the Christian point of view, that would be God and angels. But for non-Christians, I don't know what it is. They might have a different term for it.
You told us that during this experience you had to agree with an ultimate yes. Was this decision so impactful that if you had not decided to say yes, there would have been a different outcome?
Yes, definitely. Again, due to the 3 levels. One of them is the physical level. I had no idea how to walk straight anymore. I admired people for that. I was already at home by then, and whenever I looked out of the window and saw people walk straight ahead, I thought, incredible, it works. There are people who are able to walk straight. That was very fascinating to me. And then, of course, coming back to the instrument. Everything had to be reprogrammed. Finger movements, all the coordination that we need as musicians. Writing and getting strength again to be able to have a proper breathing technique. Then the coordination in the eyes, reading a bus map or turning to the left and right and becoming strong in general. The connection between finger coordination and reading, singing, all of this required a lot of strength. Then becoming open again in the ears. When I was able to walk, stand and run again, I began to listen to master classes in order to get back on the musical level. That's when I noticed that I could only stand low tones. The higher ones were terrible for me. Also scores with a lot of sharps, with lots of B, which were difficult to read, even led to vomiting sometimes, since it was too much for my head and eyes. Then the psychological level, of course. Do I let myself leave now? I could have applied for early retirement, for example, or I could have simply agreed to live my life with the disabilities at that moment and become someone who will complain only and suffer in self-pity. But that's not who I am. For myself, I also, that was during the first session with my physiotherapist, I also brought a piece of paper with me and wrote the title Life Manifestations on it to once again write down exactly what I want to do in my life, that I still have something to fulfill here. There is something which I still can, must, should or may do here in this world, depending on how one wants to formulate it. It was an insanely long list. The interesting thing is that the physiotherapist started with that first, because she already noticed that the pelvis was completely messed up and I needed multiple craniosacral sessions to get the pelvis back to normal.
May I interrupt here for a moment? You said earlier that you did not have any comminuted fractures, but you still suffered significant injuries as a result of the accident.
Exactly. Neurologists would say disconnected. You know, how does one write? How does one walk? How does one move? All of this had to be reprogrammed. Physiotherapists also use the term disconnected, reprogramming. It's like when a computer program is deleted and you have to re-enter the program again into the computer. That is how one can imagine it. The whole body was shocked and confused. For example, the pericardium was moved. That's why I always had breathing problems. I never knew where they were from. Luckily, a therapist figured out what was going on. The pelvis was totally shifted. The ligaments, everything that holds the pelvis together, was totally uncoordinated. I noticed that for a long time. For a long time, I had to pay attention that I was sitting correctly, that I wouldn't mess it all up again by sitting poorly. The really interesting thing was that there wasn't a single broken bone. But I wouldn't say that the other issues were easier to solve. The muscles were hard as a rock due to the protection from the impact. And on the other hand, the connection in the head, how does one walk, how does one stand, was interrupted. So then there is this discrepancy. How does one, with such hardened muscles, learn the other level, such as walking, standing, writing, reading, and so on? This was a true challenge for the physiotherapists. They asked themselves where they should start. Do we start with the neck? It was totally blocked and hard, but from head to toe due to the impact. Of course, one needs to protect oneself. Therefore, everything is hard as a rock. This discrepancy lasted for a very, very long time. There was even one physiotherapist who did some further education in order to help and support me. The most critical part was the part on the neck and head, the whole region around the mouth. It was very painful to solve it. Loosening these hard muscles was something very, very painful. But once the muscles were loosened, the next step was, how can the muscles gain strength again? That was the second part.
Do you have the impression that during this whole recovery time, you were also carried by this experience of light and love?
Yes. I knew for sure that it is not over. Even the statement that I got from the surgeons who were waiting for me in the hospital and who said out loud, "Look, she's alive. We thought you were dead." I took it with humor. I didn't take it as an insult at all. I mean, one could have been offended by that and asked, "What? What kind of a strange information did you get from the paramedics?" I took it with a lot of humor. And within me I knew, it is right that I am here in the world. There is still something left for me to do, and it's only going forward from here on.
Only going forward, or was there a looking back too? Many near-death experiencers report a life review which also contains an evaluation of life. Did you experience anything like that as well?
It was not evaluated. Interestingly, that has never happened, not even once. But I lived through the individual years of my life in fast motion. I really felt like a newborn in this world. I somehow knew, well, now it is my second month, it's my third month, now I am 1 year old, 2 years old. Then I called my mother once and said, I have just turned 12. Then I was 18, 19, and then I thought to myself, well, I can do the rest now too. That was very exciting.
Because you had to develop all of your skills from scratch?
Exactly. But the evaluation did not take place. I think the reason there was no evaluation was because I came along with my manifestation list during the first physiotherapy class, which was very positively focused. I didn't say, my goodness, no, when I was 20 I did this nonsense and oh, if I hadn't done that wrong. No, I was born again, so to speak, and moved forward. wrote everything down. That was an incredibly long list of things that I now appreciate about myself, what I change, and what new things I discover about myself. I even had the feeling that I had a different identity, whereas I have to say that the term identity is very difficult for me to define. Honestly speaking, I can't explain it, but I feel like I'm someone else. And then I called my mother and said, "This is how I feel now. I have reached this level, and I am someone else now." And my mother replied, "Yes, I can feel that." My mother was a very sensitive woman, and oftentimes just one word or one phrase was enough for her to know what was going on, and she said, "Yes, I can sense that."
The impression, now I am someone else. Indeed, someone else, or rather someone who you actually were and are, but for whatever reasons couldn't be before your experience?
That is a very interesting question. I believe that everyone somehow struggles, fights, or tries to become who they should be anyway. It is a mission in life. But I believe that through this cut, everything that should no longer be simply ceased much faster and much more radically, or perhaps it had to cease. It sounds radical, this incident, but in retrospect it was also a great gift. That something can be over so quickly and that a new direction can happen so fast.
Like a turbo.
Exactly.
You have mentioned various difficulties earlier. For example, the bus schedule.
Yes, an adventure.
Would you assign these difficulties to a lack of concentration because your inner being was preoccupied with completely different existential issues that were more important? Or did it have something to do with your regeneration process in general?
Yes, the last one, the regeneration process. Becoming someone new, definitely. Because coming back to this world took much longer than I thought. As I mentioned, I have asked myself for 2 weeks, am I dead or am I not dead? After 2 weeks, I realized that I wasn't dead, but that doesn't mean that I fully returned on all levels. Here's an example. I thought, okay, maybe I'll come back faster if I visit the places that are known to me, such as Welsum, where my parents had their house. Maybe I'm going to feel comfortable again and feel at home sooner, and therefore I may come to terms with things more quickly. That was the case sometimes it was not. I called my parents and I said, I'm coming to visit, I will try it, but it was too early. I thought to myself, no, I don't know my parents yet. Not anymore, but not yet. I couldn't handle it. Mentally, I was aware that these were my parents. I knew that I was in Welsum, but I didn't know how to deal with those people yet. Therefore, I had to drive back immediately. I'm lucky that my father was a medic and could, of course, understand that. He said, okay, she is not ready yet. Or once I had a conversation with a neurosurgeon who wanted to work with musicians. I thought to myself, I'll try it. I got on the train. It was in the direction to Vienna. In St. Pölten, I thought to myself, oh, I'm not sure whether I will recognize Vienna because I'm still so busy with coming back mentally and physically that the purely earthly, locally, geographically wasn't really there for me to grasp yet. There was no energy left for that yet. We agreed to meet by a fountain, which was located around the Michael's Church. I looked at the map before I left and I thought to myself, that's weird, Michael's Church. I had no memory of it and I didn't even know what it looked like, even though I studied in Vienna. I wasn't able to build a connection there. When I arrived in Vienna and was there, it was suddenly normal for me to be in Vienna. that the Michael's church is on the left and over there was this fountain, then I felt brought back somehow. But the connection, while being 2 hours away by car, the map, that wasn't possible. I wasn't able to establish this connection yet. It was very similar to the bus schedule. I thought to myself, where have I always felt comfortable? Styria? I was hiking there very often, even as a child, so I thought, I am going to drive there. Bus map. I had no idea what it says there. I already knew numbers, time, but the connection, where the point of entry was, where I needed to go, that didn't work at all. So then I somehow tricked myself. I understood that the first bus leaves at 8 o'clock in the morning, something around that. I went there and checked the time. 8 o'clock, I am right, I made that. Then I asked the bus driver, where are you driving today? Then he replied, here and there, so I thought to myself, okay, I'll get on, I'll drive with you. Then I asked him to tell me when the end of the line was. He told me that, and then I got out and asked, when is the last bus driving back? He answered me this question as well. I was already able to comprehend that. Okay, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, something around that. Then I waited until 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock and got back in. That was my way to deal with it and to save the reading of the bus schedule for later.
That seems like a real fight.
Yes, and the interesting thing that fascinates me so much is that it almost feels like a second brain. Somehow there is something inside you that is kind of creative and says, well, let's try it like this. I have an idea. I won't find the one solution which the average person would find, like standing up, reading, finding out exactly where I need to go. That is not possible yet. But I will still find a solution that I will be able to take the bus and come back again, even if that's not the normal solution. This is how I felt in many situations.
Did you also have the impression that your thinking structures had to rebuild again?
Exactly. The interesting thing is that one is even proud of it. At least I was proud that I had come up with something else. It's like two different people. One knows that none of it is possible yet, but she would like to try, and there is someone else within too who says, I have a solution.
Do you feel like today you're completely back in life again?
Yes. Even more than before, actually. Referring back to the question which you have asked before, considering becoming one truest self, I would say that I even have more joy in life than before. I feel like I am more present in life than ever. Full of creativity, simply beautiful.
Has your flute playing changed?
Yes. Returning to playing the flute was very depressing. First of all, I didn't feel like doing it anymore. We need a special breathing technique. Sometimes I became aware of what I actually had to perform. It was a very sad coming back. The physical work was, please don't get me wrong, almost funny. You can practice. I learned so many exercises from physiotherapists, and it was an incredibly great cooperation. These are exercises that I actually do until this day, whenever I feel, oh, there is some tension. The spiritual level was also a success when I had read the manifest out loud and said, 100% yes. But coming back career-wise was quite painful. Sometimes I really asked myself whether I will make it or not. And when I got into scores like Syrinx by Debussy, full of B, full of accidentals, I had to vomit. Then I thought, oh la la, that was difficult. I couldn't even remember my favorite concert, which is Mozart in D major. I was very sad about that. when one can't even remember one's favorite concert. Therefore, it was a very deep, great joy when I called my parents and said, I can remember the concert, Mozart, in D major again. I still have this picture before my eyes. I could actually cry remembering this moment. It was a feeling like winning the lottery. That's when I knew that I'm coming back to playing flute, but that took over a year.
In
the idealistic, so non-materialistic worldviews, it is assumed that the human being is not only the body, to which the brain and thus thought structures belong, but is in its essence soul or spirit. Your story seems to show from this viewpoint that the brain structures were, so to speak, rebuilt by the impulses from within, from the spiritual. Can one see it in that way?
Kann man das so sehen?
Yes, one can say that. I think that is very well said.
When looking back, some near-death experiencers come to the conclusion during their workup that this special event, the turbo, has been announced in advance in some form. For instance, through a dream. Does this apply to you too?
Yes. I remember that 9 months before the incident, I already felt that some sort of change is coming, may come, should come, and must come. It was all at once. I was also always nervous, not in a sense where I had to do something, but rather that there is something happening. Something is about to happen. Of course, I couldn't have known that it would be the car accident. But I knew that there is a change about to happen in my life. There were some indications for that. I was always excited. Sometimes I didn't know why. Well, how does one know? But somehow I already suspected that.
The time span of 9 months was also kind of interesting for you in the overall assessment of your life.
Yes, the 9 months somehow interest me a lot and keeps me busy. I mean, there are 9 months passing by from conception to birth. My car accident was kind of like a birth into a differently designed life. So I think to myself, another 9 months. Moreover, 9 months before my mother died, I wrote on my calendar, I went to see my mother in the hospital. Here we have the 9 months again. So I thought to myself, maybe one has 9 months in order to prepare for the transition from one life into another one. Through death. Well, spiritually, I mean. I'm not quite sure if it indeed is a rule, but I have had several experiences where 9 months were involved continuously.
How did your religiousness change after having this experience? As you've said before, you already were religious before the incident.
I would say it is kind of like a confirmation once again of what one has heard throughout life, that there is a God, that I am the light of this world. All of these short descriptions have been confirmed through that, and the certainty that there indeed is someone who does take care. No matter what, there is someone holding you. I wouldn't necessarily say saving you, since one has to take conscious action himself in order to come back to life, but someone who holds you. There is something, someone that just won't let you down. This certainty has increased enormously.
You are not afraid of death?
Today, I can say no. I believe the circle of light is a companion. I can always evoke this feeling that someone is taking care of me and say, this is what you experienced back then. It was wonderful. And that is always the case. It didn't just happen once. I like to call it the eternal now, which I can always call back. And whenever fear comes up, fear of whatever, I can recall it and say, look, it was like this back then, and it's always like that. There is someone holding you. There is someone taking care of you.
Do you feel like you can help other people as a result of your experience and maybe convey a special message to them?
I believe that this story can contribute a lot of hope to people's lives or give people courage who haven't experienced blows of faith or perhaps are unable to accept blows of faith. It may show that one can do it. That is the message. Yes, definitely. I told this to an older woman once, and she told me that she really enjoyed the experience of coming back to life, that there is a deep gratitude involved, and that one can start all over again. Also, there is this question, is there anything left for me in this world that I am allowed to complete? These are indeed existential topics that one can remind others of again and again. What is very important to me as well is the realization how valuable every single day is. I have said it to some people before, please, use your day. You don't know if it will be over in the next minute. This aspect has gained more importance for sure, that I really use the time as far as it's in my power. That doesn't mean, though, that one should struggle until one collapses or has a burnout. That wouldn't be a good use of time. Basically, one starts to deal with time in a very precious and sensitive way.
Would you say that you're living life much more intensely in general and enjoy a much better quality of life?
Yes, it is definitely the case that I appreciate my time even more and that I try to use my time wisely. Not too much, not too little, not to overdo things, but also not to kill time. This became kind of a statement nowadays. Moreover, I define quality of life differently now. I mean, many people, if they think of good life quality, believe that they need to possess a car, that they have to lay on the beach and tan, or I need my schnitzel and my Malakoff cake and things like that. And I don't want to deny all that. It is nice to have, and one can definitely enjoy these things. But due to this experience of mine, so many channels were opened that I learned to enjoy the simplest things so wonderfully. I watched a snail, how fast it was actually going. I got incredibly excited to see a flying May beetle or to see flowers again and to watch butterflies, excited to hear certain noises again, to perceive dragonflies again. All of these things that kind of got lost somehow. And that these simple things can be so exhilarating. That I don't want to miss, to be honest. That is quality of life for me. This perception of things that pretty much got lost almost nowadays. It also helped me a lot during Corona to simply realize, oh look, there is so much beauty that one could perceive again, which can build one up.
Were there always people with whom you could talk openly about your special spiritual experiences?
Well, in general, people find it quite difficult to do that, I have to say. Obviously, the doctors were very focused on making sure that I was physically healthy again. One keeps hearing the sentence, well, if it doesn't work out, then you will have to live with it. But I wasn't satisfied with that. I was fighting, and oftentimes even against the will of some doctors or against predictions of some doctors. On the other side, we have the psychic, the spiritual, which is quite hard to put into words. One needs a lot of distance. If you would have interviewed me 8 or 7 years ago, I would have said, no, I can't do it yet. I had the feeling that I would jump into 2 positions. The one who has experienced that, and the other position is the one of the journalist, and that doesn't go along very well. Now I have enough space, now I can talk about it. It also doesn't seem like this time period of 10 years or even 11 years by now. It doesn't seem like 11 years to me. It doesn't feel like that. No.
Were there any situations in which you would have wished to be able to speak more openly about such topics in our society?
Yes. The topic that death is a part of life needs to be intensified.
To come to a conclusion, is there one term that can describe best what you have experienced in a nutshell?
Yes, that is this deeply felt gratitude that is very, very profound, connected with the awareness that one is secure and also a certain bliss.
The great appreciation that you have for life is indeed noticeable, Ms. Möst. Thank you very much for this interview and all the best for your future.
Thank you too. Thank you.